YouTube friends. It's Lori. Welcome to the Intuitknit podcast again. You're probably in shock that I'm doing it again so soon, but I just thought I might want to share some of the things that I've been doing in the long time since I've podcast. So I want to thank a lot of the people that have commented when I put up an episode the first time. And that's very encouraging. Thanks a lot. How's everybody today? It's Friday, April the 3rd, I think. And we're all hunkered down here, as everybody else is, and trying to do things around the house sometimes. And at the moment, Corey's in the bathtub. He likes to take a bath and watch his video player from afar. And that keeps him kind of calm, and that's a great bonus for me because these days are long sometimes. So I think in the afternoon we're going to probably go for a little walk just around the block. But yeah, just keeping busy this morning. One thing I noticed looking out my window is the amount of birds that are coming to my bird feeder now. Seems to be very unusual because not many birds had really visited before, and the wildlife seems to be just a hub out there. It's really nice to see all kinds of cardinals, which are beautiful, and I was showing Corey the male and the female this morning, and that was kind of interesting. There is a squirrel, however, that's found his way or her way up to my roof, and I can see that she's carrying down pieces of insulation, so that's something I might have to get up and deal with later today. Anyways, we're here to talk about knitting, and so that's what I'll do. I just wanted to show you some of the projects that I am working on in addition to what I showed you last time. So the first thing that I've been picking up again are these socks by Sophia Camabornia. The Longing for Gotland socks, and I'm doing them in a bit of a different colorway. She's got lovely red roses for her version on the web page, but I'm using some stash, so these are the colors that I picked out. Not as much contrast as maybe there should be in some of the striping, but it's working out well. And yeah, so I'm just on the first sock, and I'm heading down now to the foot, keeping in pattern and trying to do my gussets. So that's keeping my attention. And I realized that I had used up some of the gold. So when I thought about doing a second sock, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to have this gold anymore. So I took some yarn and dyed it last night, and I think I got pretty close to the color. This is similar. So it was yellow before, and that took on some dye quite nicely. I just did that in my oven on a foil pie plate with some vinegar and some dye. So yeah, I was pleased with that. So I'll be working on that. And one of the projects that I had picked up quite some time ago in preparation for Easter, which seems to be now kind of it's going to be having to be have a different look to it, Easter celebrations, but I was originally going to give this to my mom over the Easter, but things get in the way. So this is called Rabbit Breeds Wild Rabbit, and you can see how realistic it looks, I think. This is an interesting pattern. It's quite a long pattern, and I'm only half a way through, but it's asking to blend some of the yarns by holding yarns together for the different parts of the body. So I've kind of lost my way in that, but I did have some alpaca that did seem to suit itself to the project. So I'm just sort of meandering my way through, and as I always do, I've gotten a little bit done on it, and you can see that here's the head that's starting to take shape, and the ears I've got done. So of course it doesn't really look like much until it's stuffed, does it? But it's going to be considerably bigger, I think, than in the pattern. I don't even think I checked gauge for this, so But, you know, it will be sort of somewhat of a conversation piece or a toy maybe at some point. So I don't know that it really matters. But yeah, so I'm enjoying that. It's quite a process to make a toy. I think they're underestimated as far as skill level, because it takes a little bit of in-depth kind of planning and reading and doing. You know, the small parts are kind of misleading in a way because they do take some concentration. But anyway, that's my rabbit taking shape. And I'm using these alpacas, these beautiful alpacas that I got when I was at Rhinebeck a couple of years ago. And so these are, I don't even know exactly the name of the alpaca, and I'm sorry about that. I think I took off the ball bands long ago, but yeah, I haven't done that. But yeah, so those are some of the colors that I'm currently using. I'm actually a little bit sensitive to alpaca, so it's a good thing that it isn't a garment in a way, because I think I would react to it, but a toy would be fine. So, and maybe when I do it once, it will make more sense if I would ever try it again, because of course, you know, you have more confidence the second time around and you can sort of speed through it. I think I probably wouldn't vary the colors as much as I've done in this initial version, so that would help. And then I know if you've been watching me for a while that you may have seen this project before, and this is actually from a very old magazine. It's a Knitter's magazine from 2011, issue number 104, but it's called the Harvest Jewels sweater, and this one is, you can see it on my Instagram too, and I have shown my progress on it. I think probably the last time I was talking to you, I just had the sleeves done, and for this I'm using for the body entirely hand spun yarn from a Finn sheep that I bought from Finn Sheep at the Rhinebeck Fleece Festival, New York State Fleece Festival. And so it's taking me a little while to spin up enough yarn, but then I realized I've run out a little bit. I'm just getting up to the yoke and the button bands now, so it's not critical that they match, but I have reordered more roving to spin up to finish the final details of the sweater. So for this I'm using some of my hand spun colors, and it takes a variety of different colors, and I've used these hand spun skeins that were in my store of hand spun. So these are the colors that are going to be accent colors for or they are already for the yoke that I've done. And so I'll just show it to you here. That's kind of a good representation, I think, color-wise. And you can see the color work that I've completed here. I think this really pops out, doesn't it? For those people who really like understated colors, it probably isn't a good choice, but it was in my stash and I thought, I'm going to be using it. There's no way around it. So that's what it'll look like. And I've made a steek. However, it's a very subtle demarcation between the body stitches and the steek stitches, and what I think I might do is the crochet stitch to secure it as I work my way up the sweater. So when I'm finally finished the yoke, I'm going to be doing crochet stitches along the two sides that I'll inevitably cut, and that way it will give me some peace of mind. Although I think this is fairly toothy, this yarn, so I don't think it's going to unravel necessarily, but I think just to give me peace of mind, I'll start out with some crochet stitches on that. But I'm quite pleased with the way it is coming out. I think it'll be quite lovely, especially in the fall with that red color, I think. And I'm quite happy with the yarn that was the Finn fleece. So yeah, I think it'll be quite nice. So that's the front, and here's the back. I have had to adjust the pattern as I've gone up, because I think as I went up, one of the skeins that I was using of my hand spun had a different width. So inevitably the gauge changes. So I've been just trying to hold it up against sweaters that I've already done that are yoke type sweaters. I haven't tried it on or anything, but I think just knowing that it's similar to the ones that I've already made, given that knitted fabric is pretty forgiving in sizing once it's blocked and so on, I think I'm going to be okay. So just working away on the pattern. I have another decrease or two to do in the yoke, and then we'll do the neckband and the button band. And I haven't got buttons picked out for it just yet, but that's not a problem. I've got a lot of buttons in my stash too. So yeah, that's quite a nice pattern if you ever wanted to try it. I just really liked the combination of that warm brown color and the oranges in the yoke. So yeah, I think it'll be quite pretty. Last time I podcasted, I was showing you the Romney fleece that I was processing and creating, and some of you had asked to see some of the finished skeins of yarn that I've completed, and so these are the finished skeins that I've done, and this is after the combing that I did on several of the bobbins. To produce the roving for the bobbins that have, made these skeins, I've done combing. Now, I started with flick carding with this fleece, and the final result turned out just a bit differently, and maybe you can't really appreciate it looking on the screen. But these are the ones that I've done with the flick carding, and these are the ones done with the combing, which is a little bit smoother, a little bit more worsted style. In doing it. So yeah, this is fine too. They're fairly I'm not going to say rough, but they're fairly rustic, but not unlike some of the yarn that you get from Briggs and Little, if you're familiar with that brand. And I find that when you wash these, because I've done a swatch when I did a Polworth fleece that had a similar tooth to it, when you've done a swatch and then washed it, you can see how soft it becomes. So I'm not really worried. I think it'll be fine. I probably will endeavor to make another sweater out of that. So, and of course, these are the little nests that I'm making. It's almost satisfying just to see these in a bowl on the days that I use combing to kind of occupy myself. It's nice to see these accumulate in the bowl. And then I know they're all ready for my spinning later. Yeah, so I'm quite happy with that. I did pick up some of the scraps that I have, because I have been working on something I said I would never work on, but I did decide to make this scrap sock blanket. And I've gotten a few more squares done on it. So yeah, I think it's coming along. It's going to be quite muted in its coloring, but that's actually quite pleasing to me. And I think that'll be a nice little blanket to put at the end of a bed, or even like as I'm watching TV on my lap or something like that. So yeah, mostly greens I'm seeing, but that's okay. That's a nice color to have around. And then the other thing I was doing was I picked up a mindless project in that it's just a Intuited shawl that I'm making out of sock yarn. And see, my daughter's sending me a message here. She does that from time to time. We send pictures back and forth. And so anyway, this is some of the yarn that I'm using, and this is Socks That Rock. From a long time ago. In fact, I think my daughter bought me this when I first started to knit sort of more avidly. And so this is the shawl that I'm making, and I'm including some other stashed yarn for some of the stripes that I'm putting in it. The gauge is probably a little too loose for a shawl, but I'm kind of thinking when I block it that I'm not going to really heavily block it and maybe try to get it a little bit smaller than what it's looking like here. So maybe use some hot water. I don't know. The center spine looks a bit wide, doesn't it? But yeah, so that's knitting up pretty nicely. And this is some other stashed sock yarn that I had. So just a crescent shawl, and I'm sure all of you know how to do that. But sometimes you do want sort of a muted color. At least I do. I find that I don't tend to wear my shawls as much that are sort of high color value. They're not as versatile, so I was looking for something a little darker that I could just sort of put on as I'm just meandering my way around. The other thing that I've been trying, and probably shouldn't have tried this week, was I had some lichen that I had collected, or had collected for me in Scotland when I was there in Inverness. And my lovely Airbnb host, when she heard that I was interested in natural dyeing, she said, "Oh, well, we've got lots of lichen growing in our backyard." So she went out when we were on one of our day trips and she gathered some lichen for us. So I was happy to get home with it on the plane. I was almost surprised that they let me go on the plane with it, but yeah, so I have a big bag of it. So I thought, well, I'll follow some directions, and I'm using this book called Craft of the Dyer, and it's by Karen Leigh Castleman. It's all text. There's no pictures in it, but it does give you some idea about how to use lichens, the process that they're suggesting. And I suppose I could have gotten Corey to, collect for me some urine. He's here for a while, but I decided that I would just use ammonia. So I went to the hardware store quite a long time ago and did have some ammonia that I could use. And I was surprised to hear that the ammonia concentration of the dye bath, I guess it's the dye bath that you're trying to create, is quite concentrated. So anyway, I put some lichen in a big jar and put some water in it, and then topped it up according to the proportions that it's saying. And that was fine. You're supposed to stir it around daily, a couple times a day, and keep it somewhere room temperature. And so that's what I've been doing, and I think it's been there for 5 days now. But I think what she's saying is the longer the better for the lichen, and apparently you can use the lichen again and again. You'll get more subtle colors in the following processes, but you'll still get some color out of it. And the colors that you get are quite remarkable in that the lichen itself looks green, but the color that you're going to derive from it is going to be reds and magentas. So she's saying anyway. Now, I don't know if I've got the right kind of lichen for the process or outcome that she's suggesting, but nevertheless, it's sort of an experiment. And so I'm just trying to look at the directions that she said here, which maybe if you've ever done it, perhaps you can advise me. Okay, so it says general processing for all lichens. Okay, so there's one called an Orsalia recipe, and it's usually used for indigenous North American lichen, but I'm not sure if that lichen is similar to the one that I had from Scotland. But it's suggesting that you use 4 cups of dry lichen, 2 cups of liquid household ammonia, and 4 cups of water. So by that I'm assuming that it's, sort of you double the amount of water for the amount of ammonia, which is what I think I did come up with as I poured it into the jar I'm using. However, I was pouring it into a basin that we have in the basement, like a wash basin, And I think maybe the fumes came up as I poured the ammonia into this jar. I didn't really notice it at the time. I thought, oh yeah, that's ammonia. Anyway, I covered it up and did all the right things and put it away. And then the next day I was feeling kind of like a sore throat. When I would take a breath, it kind of would be, a little bit more difficult to take a breath in. So right in the midst of all this pandemic, terrible things that are happening, here I am playing with ammonia where I'm not really sure if it's actually that I've got something or whether it's the ammonia that I've been using. So that was dumb on my part. But anyway, as the days have gone by, I have not felt any signs of infection. So I'm assuming it was the ammonia. So note to self, don't use ammonia when you're doing lichen dyeing during a pandemic. Yeah. Anyway, I will share with you later what the outcome of that was. I'm going to be probably leaving it for a few days longer. And then I have to pour off the ammonia, which I think I'll take outside to do. And I'm assuming that wool will stand up to the ammonia. Now I'm thinking that you'll probably have to dilute whatever the liquor is that you get from that, but I'm just sort of curious as to what ammonia does to wool. If anyone out there knows, that would be helpful to know too. So I think that's just about it. Corey's probably getting waterlogged up there in the bathtub, so I just wanted to check in with you today. It's a short video, but I noticed there's a few really lovely podcasters, showing themselves. Lately, I just saw that the Gentle Knitter put up another episode, and I'll be watching her later. And so I really hope that you're having a gentle day, and that you're having an okay time, in the sense that hopefully none of your family members have been impacted so far by the virus that's plaguing us. Anyway, I'm going to close off, and I hope that you all have a great day. Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.